Hello, this is Pharaoh Vincent with Nation 506 and Age of Z Origins. And this video is going to focus on mid-range player versus player formations. In my previous video, I talked about the individual troops and units for all of the different modes of attack in the game. And in this video, I really want to just discuss what you should be sending in general when you are attacking. With mid-range players, you have a little bit of a nuanced play style. Most players tend to play long range. As a mid-range player, you are going to be naturally suited to fight against them at most levels of play. So generally, if you are on about equivalent or maybe even a little bit under their stats, you're going to generally win those fights. But you need to make sure that you're focusing on fleets that have a couple of things that you may not necessarily think of right away. So to be specific, when you're going to attack in, a void or a loss-based event, right? Civil wars, things of that nature. You don't get the luxury of a 1/198 like your long-range counterparts do, right? Your troops are too close to the front lines to necessarily get that benefit. So what does that mean? That means that you're going to be wanting to send more frontline than your counterparts. And I do recommend that you send about a one-ish% of your fleet size to every single attack for your melee. So what would that look like for me, right? 1% is about 26,000 troops, right? So if I sent 2,000 shredders, that right there is going to hit around that mark for those events specifically. I would recommend 1 to 2,000 for somebody that had my fleet size, right? If you only have 90,000 troops and you're playing mid-range, then you're looking at about 100 shredders. So it just depends on where you're at with your fleet. The key element for you, though, is that you do want to add in one unit of the rest of your front line. Again, focus on shredders and tanks for your front line. They are the best offensive choices that you do have. And from there, the benefit of being a mid-range player is that you can send max zombies and be relatively safe. Your zombies will be tucked away within your mid-range troops, so when you go to attack cities, you don't have to send a single zombie like your long-range counterparts do. You're more than welcome to send a full fleet of zombies. Yeah, you might lose some, but honestly, with where they're tucked away, that is going to give you a little bit more killing power than your counterparts will. From there, you're going to want to get one of each of your other troops, depending on like the rest of your mid-range fleet. Then you max out either rockets, if that is your highest tier troop, or stormtroopers, if that is your highest troop. So one of these two will be maxed. I don't recommend sending both like I have right here on the screen, but whatever your highest tier is, make sure to send those because these are your bread and butter troops as a mid-range player. And then you need back row. You have to have it because if you don't have back row, your Titans will die instantly, and your Titans are needed, right? They do a lot of damage in combat, so you need your back row specifically to protect your Titans. I recommend about 1,000, right? So if you're sending about 1,000, units worth of back row in each of the sectors, right? So that would be 1,000 snipers. That'll be, 100 EMP cannons. It's going to be 200 of your actual uranium cannons and another 200 shielders. If you're sending this, that's generally enough to keep your Titan safe for most encounters. So just keep that in mind as you build this fleet out. And honestly, this should get you through most of your loss-based encounters as a very good, solid beginning. Now, when you get to your non-loss events, the good news is your fleet changes very little. That's the kind of nice thing about being a mid-range player is you actually really don't change much from here. The only thing that you would want to do is add more front row and get rid of all the ones. So you would just drop off all of these little ones, because when you get into non-loss events, these 1Z, 2Z events, or sorry, troops, they really don't do much for you. They're there in loss events to mitigate your losses, but when you don't have to worry about troop loss, you don't want to bother feeding in Titan Thor kills. So I would jump up straight up to, at least a third of your fleet. Again, this is going to be true for both, long range and mid range players. At least a third of your fleet should be front row. And the reason being is you need time for your mid range troops to kill off the enemy back row before the fight ends, right? So you're really looking to do that. So, again, for me, 10,000 is my third. And then, same is true. You're going to send about 1,000 to 100 of, about 1,000 troops worth of all of the back row, and then max out on either your rockets or stormtroopers. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But with that, you should be able to win most fights. I do want to give one more nod to an alternative fleet, or at least an alternative fleet idea, and that is a 50-50 fleet. And what does that look like? It actually is something that I've seen a lot of mid-range players start doing lately, where you add in specifically your Gatling guns. This is your machine gun troop, right? These guys right here. And the reason that people do that is because they melt through frontline. So if you're going up against another mid-range player, you are naturally at a disadvantage fighting yourself, because your troops try to kill their back row, and then your troops are going to go kill their Titans, and then your troops are going to finally start killing their mid-range troops. So it takes a long time for a mid-range player to get to those juicy troops that are actually attacking the other mid-range player's juicy troops. So I have seen the 50-50 fleet for for uranium mines, or if you know for a fact you're hitting a mid-range player. I've seen people prioritize Gatling guns, because it is kind of the direct counter to yourself as a mid-range player, because you're going to start eating through the front line, then you're going to eat through their mid row, and then you'll get to their back row. So it's one of those kind of interesting fleet choices you can make. And I do highly recommend, everyone kind of get a chance, play around with it. If you're a mid-range player, these will make you a little bit better. And, that's kind of the logic behind how the 50-50 fleet came about. So I hope everyone enjoys, a look at a fleet size or a fleet type that doesn't really get a lot of attention, and that there's not a lot of videos out there. So I feel free to ask me questions. Definitely make some comments down below. I'm sure everyone has fought a mid-range player, so let me know if you've seen these fleets, and hope everyone has a good rest of your day. Happy hunting, and we'll see you on the next one.